the toughest experience I, I hesitate to share this. In ayahuasca group, when you're drinking with, say, a dozen other people, there becomes an element of telepathy or communication that can take place. And it happened that I was in one group where it turned out later, we got the facts later, that was one individual who shouldn't have been there. In ayahuasca, there's a tendency for you to lower your barriers. Your heart opens. You're very vulnerable to other people. And unfortunately, and this is a phenomenon that I would warn anybody of who's drinking ayahuasca in the West today, or anywhere as a matter of fact, is that there are people who are using that vulnerability to gain psychic advantage over you. And it was the feeling, first of all, it happened to my wife, Santha, who was beside me, and then it happened to me, of an individual trying to enter our heads and take control of us. And we learned more about him the following day, and it turned out he'd been there the year before and had done exactly the same thing. We didn't know that at the time. He seemed to have developed some sort of psychic power. And when we questioned him about it, he said, "I'm this basement shaman. I go around ayahuasca groups because I benefit from them." And what he meant by benefiting from them was basically, I'm a psychic vampire. I draw people's energy. I take it away from them. So these dangers can occur. And that's where a good shaman will stop that happening.
Wait, what did the ayahuasquero do?
In this case, he did not do anything. It was most unhelpful. But I think he's learned greatly from that experience.
But how does the ayahuasquero know that is happening?
Well, that's something where you have to tell them. And in this case, my wife Santha did tell the ayahuasquero, but he did not.
He said, "This person is trying to enter my mind. Yeah, they're trying to take from me."
Yeah. And there's a natural tendency to assume you're making that up as well.
And you're lucid in that moment. You're lucid enough to describe what's happening.
Yes. You can often be lucid during an ayahuasca journey.
You're speaking English to that person.
You can be.
And the person who is entering the mind, is he sitting in another area? Is he hovering over
you? He was on a bed, not a bed, a mat on the floor, just 2 or 3 people away from us. And we were not the only people who he affected. He affected other people in that room. And there was a gentleman in that room who literally fell down the stairs from the ceremonial space to upstairs trying to get away from him. It really got very, very, very dark.
Did everyone confront him afterwards?
I think I described it in a lengthy article on my website. Yes, 2 days later he was asked to leave because he kind of said, I do this. I benefit from the energy of others.
And then what type of energy is he getting? Like, how is he benefiting?
Yeah.
In the case, I can tell you particularly in the case of my wife. My wife, Santha, and I are both the same age. She's 73 next birthday as well. But Santha looks a lot younger. I look my age.
You look great.
But Santha looks a lot younger, and he focused on her. He homed in on her when he asked her age. And she told him his age, and he said, "You're that young." And that's when he focused in on her. It was like she had some energy, and she does, that was energizing her, and that was making her a fantastic grandmother and a fantastic mother and the most wonderful wife on the planet Earth. But she has that energy within her.
He tried to absorb.
He wanted that energy.
Did he ask her that
energy? And she got no, he did not. What he did was, at a certain point when we were gathering to drink the brew, he put his arms on her shoulder and blew in her face like that. Now, in Amazonian shamanism, the breath can be used for different purposes, and one of the purposes can be used for attack. They fire things called virotes, psychic darts, at another individual. Again, only people who've worked with ayahuasca will really get this, and a lot of your audience will not get this, and they'll think Hancock's a lunatic. But I'm just reporting to you what happened. Not only was she psychically damaged by this attack, but she also became physically ill after the attack.
Wow.
She developed shingles. She still has shingles as a result of that, would crop up again and again on her back in exactly the place that one of his hands touched her.
Wow.
So it's just
okay. This is great. Hold on. So there's a physical manifestation of an emotional and spiritual experience that she had. So if that can happen within your body, why can it not happen within anybody else's body? Why can it not happen outside of our bodies?
Well, I think it depends. I think it depends on how much you've lowered your guard. We're all on guard, you know. We all defend ourselves psychically as well as physically. But this is the danger of the ayahuasca state, that your heart opens.
So maybe there's an argument to be made for, let's say that there was this war on drugs, right? Maybe they saw it as something that was too vulnerable to be handed out to the masses without a way to, if we're giving them the best case scenario.
Sure, yeah.
I don't think that we want to treat the theys, whoever the people in charge is, with best case scenario, but this is a very vulnerable situation. You use people, you're seeing a perfect example of somebody using it for nefarious intent. Like, imagine the average person doing it on a Friday.
I spoke to a psychologist that does psychedelic therapy, and he even reported in a clinical trial these telepathic sort of revelations.
Oh, wow. It's very
that
common.
even in a clinical trial inside like an actual medical room, there was a person on, I think, high-dose ketamine or high-dose psilocybin, I can't remember, and the clinician that was observing them basically thought about their dog at home. This is a purely anecdotal example, but thinking about their dog at home, like, oh, did I go let the dog out? And then the patient that was on high-dose ketamine took the shade off, took off the headphones and said, I'm thinking of dogs or whatever, and was sharing effectively the same vision that they were thinking, even though only one of them was on high-dose psychedelic.
Okay, so here we go.
It's surprisingly common.
Real quick, right?
Mark.
How do we build the pyramids? How do you organize 20,000 people, 30,000 people to be all on the same page and deliver the blocks in the exact same ways and cut them in the exact same shapes and, well, maybe not the exact same shapes, but to certain specifications? And
you end up with this perfect thing that weighs 6 million tons and is almost perfectly oriented to true north and is 481 feet high, you know, and contains 2.5 million individual blocks of stone.
And the slightest tweak or the slightest miscalculation can turn the entire thing off and it won't even be able to stand on itself.
You end up in a corkscrew instead of a pyramid if you make the slightest error down at the base.
If you could find a way to, I don't want to even say manipulate, but access that sort of telepathic ability, it's just a better communication tool for a project of this size.
Yes, and let's not forget that there are other abilities such as telekinesis, which are also sneered at by Western science, because we do everything, well, it's not so much a matter of belief. We do everything in our society through mechanical advantage. We're used to leverage, we're used to machines which do stuff. We look at cranes for building, so on and so forth. It may be that there are innate human abilities that we're not, that have actually lapsed in our society, but that are still there. And this is where, again, to those who sneer at such ideas, I would say take a close look at the work of Rupert Sheldrake. Rupert Sheldrake is a scientist, and he's done a great deal of